So former President Barack Obama has now broken his silence on Donald Trump and his fascist turn. And man, this is interesting for a number of reasons. So I got a few clips here for you. Let's dive into it. Let's start with the one that went the most viral. Here we go.
Imagine if I had done any of this. Let me just, I just want to be clear about this. Imagine that. Imagine if I had pulled Fox News' credentials from the White House press corps. You're laughing, but no, this is what's happening. Imagine if I'd said to law firms that were representing parties that were upset with policies my administration had initiated, that you will not be allowed into government buildings. We will punish you economically for dissenting from the Affordable Care Act or the Iran deal. We will ferret out students who protest against my policies.
I honestly think it's fair to say this. Obama would have been impeached immediately. If he did what Trump is doing, he would have been impeached immediately. Just the Fox News thing alone, if he said, Fox News, you're losing your credentials for the White House, get out, he would have been impeached immediately. Trump did this to the Associated Press because they're like, we're going to call the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of Mexico. We're not going to change it to the Gulf of America. He flipped out and said, you're done. You're out of here. And he brought in Newsmax and fucking Tim Pool's asshole podcast show. Like, this is what he did. If Obama did that, if Obama did 1/10 of that, he absolutely would have been impeached, and there would have been a number of Democratic senators who crossed the aisle to vote with Republicans to impeach him, and he would have been removed from office.
It's unimaginable that the same parties that are silent now would have tolerated behavior like that from me, or a whole bunch of my predecessors. So, and I say this not on a partisan basis. This has to do with something more precious, which is, who are we as a country, and what values do we stand for?
So he even, I think he said there too, in the middle, that if I was like disappearing students, that's an outright, call to, hey, Mahmoud Khalil, he was kidnapped for being pro-Palestine. You have another student who wrote an op-ed that was critical of Israel, disappeared, right? You have hundreds of students now losing their legal status because they partook in pro-Palestine protests. And he mentioned that in the middle there. Let me make sure I didn't mishear that. I want to hear it again.
We will punish you economically for dissenting from the Affordable Care Act or the Iran deal. We will ferret out students who protest against my policies.
Yeah. All right, we got more from this speech. Here we go.
This has to do with something more precious, which is, who are we as a country, and what values do we stand for? And now, this is not just an abstraction, and I think this is one of the challenges that we have. And I saw this even before the last election. I think people tend to think, democracy, rule of law, independent judiciary, freedom of the press, that's all abstract stuff because it's not affecting the price of eggs. Well, you know what? It's about to affect the price of eggs. One of the things that has distinguished us in the past has been this basic idea that we are a rules-based society. What that means is that, you know what, I can support one candidate instead of another, and I don't have to worry that the police are going to come harass me or my customers. That's what happens in other places. That's what happens in Russia. We take for granted the idea that we don't have to pay bribes or hire somebody's cousin in order to get a business permit.
The basic liberal values, what he's talking about, like having checks and balances, not having a gangster thug mafia government that would like intimidate you if you speak out against the president. This is a point I made recently, is like people did start to take basic liberal values for granted, right? And this is what it looks like when you don't have it. That's when everybody goes, oh shit. So that like that was on the menu to like get rid of those things, to actually get rid of those things. For the president of the United States to say, I'm just going to completely and utterly disregard multiple courts that told me in no uncertain terms you can't do this thing. I'm just going to disregard it. When they said, hey, you kidnapped somebody illegally and without due process sent them to an El Salvador slave labor camp. And the judge said, I know that plane's in the air. Turn that bitch around because this is not legal. And they disregarded it and said, the plane was already over international water, so you have no authority. Tee-hee. That's when people look at that and they go, oh my God, I didn't even know that that was like possible, that that was something anybody would think of as president to just, I'm just going to flagrantly disregard the courts and take away the most basic constitutional rights. That's when people realize like, oh, we took basic liberal values for granted, right? Enlightenment values for granted. And he's definitely right about this part. You know, now that they're not only on the way out, they are gone. They're already gone. When you've already kidnapped over 200 people and illegally sent them to an El Salvador slave labor camp. When Trump came out the other day and said, even if they're American citizens, yeah, we're going to send them to El Salvador. That is wildly illegal, wildly unconstitutional, and he doesn't care. And he's got the sycophants and the gangsters in place to just carry out his orders. And yes, in that moment, people go, oh, well, those things, I like it the old way. Like, I like it the old way. And we were never perfect on these things, but certainly domestically, we were way better than we are now, right? With American empire, it's almost always been the case since we became the world empire. Oh my God. If it's overseas, if it's foreign policy, they bomb whoever they want. They fucking put in puppet governments. They violate international laws, and all that stuff is horrible and totally indefensible. Domestically, though, there was always more seriousness to the system where you do, you know, if any court said to any previous president, like, hey, you can't illegally ship people to an El Salvador slave labor camp, they'd be like, okay, right? With Trump, it's just like, wrong, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. He's not done yet, though.
That's how we built the economy we did. That's why this place worked. And it has very concrete impacts on all of our lives. So, this is the first time I've been speaking publicly for a while. I've been watching a little bit. Yeah. Let me just close this portion of my remarks by saying it is up to all of us to fix this. It's not going to be because somebody comes and saves you. The most important office in this democracy is the citizen, the ordinary person who says, no, that's not right.
So he's right, but he's also wrong, because there was like a million people who just protested Trump, a million people. And it was great, energetic, gives everybody hope, sends a message to them. But he's also sort of underestimating the depths of the depravity of the Trump administration, because as we discussed previously on this show, there's evidence that they, on April 20th, are going to invoke the Insurrection Act and declare martial law. And in that scenario, Trump would turn around and say, all protests are illegal, right? And the fact that he's gotten away with everything to this point means he feels emboldened. He got away with 91 crimes. Everybody knows that. Got away with January 6th and the fake elector slate. Everyone knows that. Got away with tanking the global economy on purpose, as he admits. And so when he declares martial law, what then? What then? Because yes, you need that bottom-up pressure. He's 100% right about that. But you also do sort of need leaders. You do need leaders who have positions of power and authority who are willing to take risks and fight back. So he's not done, but I got to give you my overall takeaway from this is actually a little counterintuitive. Wait for it.
So, and I do think one of the reasons that our commitment to democratic ideals has eroded is that we got pretty comfortable and complacent. You know, it has been easy during most of our lifetimes to say you are a progressive, or say you are for social justice, or say you're for free speech, and not have to pay a price for it. And now we're at one of those moments where, you know what, it's not enough just to say you're for something. You may actually have to do something and possibly sacrifice a little bit.
I mean, there's definitely a point here, because the same thing is true with trade wars and tariffs. Roughly every 100 years, we do this. You have some psychopath who goes in there and starts a trade war and tanks the economy. And then everybody who remembers that goes, oh, let's not do that again. But the last time we did it was what? Fucking Smoot-Hawley did a serious tariffs regime. And so that was so long ago, and it exacerbated the Great Depression. Nobody's alive from that era to be like, hey, that's a bad fucking idea, right? And the people who do know, they don't have the firsthand experience of it. Same thing with massive wars, right? Massive wars break out every certain period of time because people don't remember how horrible it was, and then you'll do it again, and then the people who lived through that will go, we're not fucking doing that again, and you'll have a period of relative peace and stability. And what he's talking about is the same thing in terms of basic democratic rights, basic constitutional rights and civil liberties, free speech and things of that nature, that everybody did sort of take them for granted, and now you have some psychopath who's just willy-nilly getting rid of it. And it's like, oh, fuck, wait a second, don't do that.
So, yeah, if you're a law firm being threatened, you might have to say, okay, we will lose some business because we're going to stand for a principle.
And so many of them didn't. So many of them caved. Trump basically extorted these law firms, said, I'm signing an executive order to target you, stripping away your ability to do any business with the government, et cetera, et cetera. And most of them were like, what do you want? What do you want? $40 million pro bono legal work? Fine. Got it. Thankfully, there was just a letter that came out. I think it was hundreds of law firms are standing up against it. But some of the biggest name law firms did the opposite. And we're like, we'll cave to Trump, whatever you want, dog.
If you are a university, you may have to say, figure out, are we in fact doing things right? Have we in fact violated our own values, our own code, violated the law in some fashion? If not, and you're just being intimidated, well, you should be able to say, well, that's why we got this big endowment. We'll stand up for what we believe in, and then we'll pay our researchers for a while out of that endowment, and we'll give up the extra wing or the fancy gymnasium that we can delay that for a couple of years, because academic freedom might be a little more important. For most of human history, and to this day in most of places in the world, there is a cost to challenging the powers that be, particularly if they're abusing that power. And this idea, and I've noticed this among some wealthier folks who, after George Floyd, they were right there, and a bunch of companies were talking about how they cared about diversity and they wanted to do this, and they were all for that, and they are mute right now. But what that tells me is it was...
No, they're not mute. They're not mute. They are actively rolling back their DEI programs. They're not mute. They're totally snuggling up to Trump and Trumpism.
Okay when it was cool and trendy. And when it's not so much. And that, I think, is what we have to, each of us has to examine in our own hearts. Is all right, we say we're for equality. Are we willing to fight for it? Are we going to risk something for it? We say that we're for rule of law. Are we going to stick to that when it's tough, not when it's easy?
My overall takeaway from this is counterintuitive. And I want to remind you real quick what he said up front, because this is the part that I think Obama is missing, which is honestly devastating, because there is somebody who honestly I think could have made it so there was no Trump era, that the Trump era never happened. Ready? One more time. Listen to this.
Imagine if I had done any of this. Let me just, I just want to be clear about this.
Now, what Obama means by this is correct, as I pointed out. He means, imagine if I did Trump's fascism. Imagine if I ripped up the Constitution in as extreme a way as he's doing, deported people to El Salvador with no due process whatsoever. That's what he's saying, and he's right about that. But there's another interpretation of this. where he says, imagine if I did any of this. Well, if by any of this you mean, imagine if I didn't violate the laws, but imagine if I violated the norms and the civility. Imagine if I was different as a president and didn't just color within the lines. See, this is what I think he's missing, is that if Barack Obama made 3 changes to his presidency, I don't think we would have had a Trump era. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Number 1, when we had the subprime mortgage crisis and the Great Recession and the economy tanked, actually arrest the criminal banker frauds on Wall Street who orchestrated this to make short-term profit, destroy the global economy for short-term profit. They are criminals. They committed countless crimes. Arrest them, convict them, put their asses in jail, sending a message. We don't take fuckery, even from the top 1%. If you break the laws and you destroy the global economy, your ass is going down because we actually believe in the rule of law. He was just giving this whole spiel about the rule of law. Now, he's better on that than Trump. There's no denying that whatsoever. But at the same time, you need a little bit more enforcement of said laws. So you should have, if you just prosecuted the criminal bankers on Wall Street, that's number 1. Number 2, instead of bailing out the banks and then letting them pay bonuses to the same people who crashed their companies, bankrupted their companies, and crashed the global economy, if instead of that, you bailed out the people, bottom-up bailout, not top-down bailout. He did the trickle-down approach. Let's give the banks the money and hope they do the right thing. They didn't. They didn't do the right thing. They paid bonuses. They put their middle finger up to everybody. So, number 1, he needed to arrest the criminal banker fraudsters on Wall Street. Number 2, he needed to bail out the people instead of the banks. And then number 3, he had a supermajority. If he twisted arms better and didn't just get us the Affordable Care Act, the ACA, which keeps a private healthcare system in place, right? If he gave us true universal healthcare, Medicare for all, with that supermajority, there wouldn't have been a Donald Trump. Because guess what? That populist anger that was bubbling in the country, it would have gone away. You arrested the bankers, you bailed out the people, you gave everybody health care. What's there to be mad about? Some psychopath like Trump coming along and say, everything's terrible, this country's going to hell, and I'm going to save it. People be like, I have health care. The bankers got arrested. That it's not going to resonate as much. So the point I would make to Obama is, yes, nobody should act like Trump. Nobody should act like Trump. He's a fascist. He's doing a robber baron coup. He's destroying everything that's good about this country. But the aspect that he didn't do enough of was he didn't violate enough norms. He didn't throw the civility out the window. He didn't play hardball politics like FDR, and he wasn't a transformational candidate. He was a centrist who colored within the lines. And people got more and more and more and more angry the entire time. Now, again, to be clear, if you tell me right now, hey, you switch out Donald Trump for Barack Obama, I would be like, I'll take that deal in a second. Anybody with a functioning brain would say they'd take that deal in a second because a centrist is far superior to a fucking fascist and a robber baron. But at the same time, we need to take lessons away from this moment. And the lesson is you can't have a toothless, feckless, weak Democratic Party that's not willing to make good trouble. And good trouble at the time, it would have been so fucking scandalous and the media would have melted down if Barack Obama came out and said, we are prosecuting these criminal fraudsters on Wall Street. It would have been a huge deal, but the people would have loved it. It would have been a huge deal to bail out the people instead of the banks, but the people would have loved it. It would have been a huge deal, and there would have been so much dissent from the wealthy and the health insurance companies if he said, we're not doing the ACA, we're doing Medicare for all. But he needed that. So he needed a little bit more of the fuck it energy in him. He needed a little bit more of the, no, I'm going to do the shit that really shakes the system up, right? And that's the thing that I think he's missing, is like, there's a lot of people who look at Barack Obama and say, I kind of wish you broke more rules, right? Not laws, but like more rules. More things that are like taken for granted in Washington, D.C., that you color within the lines, and there's a way you do things. Like, I wish you thought more outside of the box. I wish you were willing to take more risks, right? And so that's what I think he's missing in this. He's right, though, that if you just say the exact same set of facts and policies that Donald Trump is doing, it's Barack Obama doing them instead, I think he'd be impeached immediately. And I think he'd actually be kicked out of office because Democratic senators would cross the aisle and vote to remove him from office. if he violated First Amendment rights like this, took away people's free speech, destroyed due process, destroyed habeas corpus domestically for people. If he did that, yeah, I absolutely think it would have been a universal outcry and he would have been kicked out. But no reasonable person wants you to be a dictator, a fascist, a robber baron like Donald Trump, where he violates every law willy-nilly. What we wanted from you was to be FDR, was to take on the powerful moneyed interests and fundamentally change the way Washington works by ending the corruption, by delivering for the people. And on that front, he didn't deliver like he could have. It's way better than any Republican. There's no denying that. Anybody who tells you, oh, it's all equal and they're all... That is not true. It is not equal and they are not the fucking same. Having said that, yeah, you need to do more. And we could have easily prevented the absolute nightmare that we're living through right now. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.